Stetson, my assistant FO, he stepped up and took charge of the artillery support for the company that I left just weeks before TET started. I could have been there as the FO rather than Stetson. And it just so happened that I had moved from the FO to the battalion fire support coordinator because the incumbent was on R&R leave. He went home, to see his wife, and I went to Hawaii to see his wife, and I they asked me to step up and take his place, and the new battalion commander came in and said he wanted two officers in the Fire Support Coordination Center, one to maneuver with the battalion element, one to stay back and coordinate, fire support and all that sort of thing. So that's why I stayed. And, that left me with some guilt feelings.
So you
And
moved into that officer's place and Stetson moved into your place.
mhm.
And then he was killed.
He came back from leave. The officer came back from leave, and I stayed with him.
Oh, because the commander wanted two officers.
Yeah.
What happened to Stetson?
Well, Stetson was killed uh, on the 17th of February in a firefight. And he wasn't killed outright. He was shot in the upper abdominal area, and he was brought to the battalion aid station where the battalion headquarters was. I had been on a fire mission at the same time of that firefight. I was asked to conduct a precision destruction mission on the Citadel wall, trying to knock an impossible mission, really, that I was very contemptible towards because there was no way that an artillery round, even a 8-inch artillery howitzer, was no way it was going to knock a hole in a 10-foot thick Citadel wall. But that's what I was asked to do. After one round, it was called off because the attacking Marines was too close to them.
Mhm.
So they called it off. And I got back to the battalion headquarters and got out of my Jeep, and I saw that there was a Marine lying on a stretcher in the area right outside the headquarters. And I walked over, and lo and behold, it was Stetson.
Mhm.
It was incredible. And I asked him what had happened. And he pointed to a small entry wound in his abdomen and he said, Lieutenant, I've been shot. And I don't know how I reacted, with disbelief, speechless. And he said, don't worry, Lieutenant, I'm going to be okay. I guess he could see the horror on my face. He turned his face away then. And the next thing I remember is a corpsman and a driver of a vehicle rushed up and loaded Stetson in and drove off. And I later found out that night that he had died after he got back to Fubai. Steve and I sort of had an easy time talking with one another. And we shared confidences about our families and what what we had done in Vietnam to date. We both knew we'd have to go back. That didn't bother us. We just were enjoying the interlude there in Okinawa. And at some point, I felt like I had the liberty and confidence in him uh, to tell him about Ken Stetson, my assistant FO, who was killed, who I was really close to with. And I was super impressed with the way that Joyner responded, which was just sort of quiet, understanding. He was an excellent listener. And, his response was sort of limited to just the observation, well, I knew that he understood the pain. Uh, but, he said, well, we have a job to do. And when we go back, we've got to turn to that job and finish what we came here to do. Um, that didn't bother me at all. At least I had someone to talk to. See, uh, I was really shaken by Stetson's death. And thank goodness I had someone I was able to talk to about it. Because in Vietnam, during the war, in combat, people were dropping at this point of the war, this 1967 and 8, at the height of the war, there were over 16,000 um, Americans killed in the war in 1968, over 11,000 in 1967 and 69. So basically, I was there during the height of the Vietnam War. People were dying beside me, right and left, the entire time. But, none of us really had the resources to be able to grieve about it. Um, someone died today. Well, hours from now, you've got a job to do. You don't have time to think about what happened to that guy. So being in Okinawa for that month gave me the time and the space that I needed to sort of deal with Stetson, Stetson's death. And, I had Joyner there who I knew he would not share any of the information, about how I felt about this with anyone. Steve was a lot more guarded, I think, than I was. Now, I knew that he was bothered by his experiences. I knew that. Uh, but when I probed to see, if he would sort of tell me things along the same lines as what I was telling him, he held back. And I did not judge him harshly for that. I understood that. Steve's friend told me that Steve said something about when he was discussing his experiences in Nam. He said that what bothered him, telling his friend, what bothered him was leading men in combat, being responsible for their welfare. He felt a personal responsibility to the point that sometimes he might have been paralyzed about making decisions that would threaten the lives of one of the people who he worked with.
What was it about him? I mean, because there are a lot of names you mention in your memoir, and there are a lot of names you mention of Marines who were lost in that war, and also a couple corpsmen, Navy corpsmen. What was it about Steve Joyner that made you not only want to remember him and to keep his memory alive, but to do all of the work that went into writing a book? What was it about him that um, seemed to kind of capture your?
Yeah. Well, I learned, well, I guess what struck me at that time was his sort of compassion that he had, um, talking about his family. He was very, very proud of his family, very close to his family. He had lost his father, and what made him actually go into the Marine Corps was that he had lost his father when he was a junior in college. He was a great football player. He was a very accomplished, could have been a professional football player. He was an all American at junior college and started as a linebacker with Don Coryell, Joe Gibbs, and John Madden at San Diego State. But he never wanted to be defined as a football player. When I knew him, he sort of ran the other way. He didn't want to even talk about football. He wanted to lead men in combat. That's what he told people at San Diego State when he made the decision. Everyone said, what a magnetic personality he was. But it was a personality without ego, a very rare thing. Uh, you know, he would walk into a room and sort of his personality was such that people would be drawn to him. But one of the reasons that he was so engaging was that there was no ego or self-absorption there, and he was always very good about asking about people, how they were doing, what they were doing, et cetera, et cetera. Steve's unit was on Hill 689, which overlooked Quezon, to the east. It was very close to Quezon, a few thousand meters, overlooking the base. It was under constant NVA artillery fire and mortar fire. Anyway, Steve's commanding officer on May 24th, he was rotated back home. His tour ended. So Steve became the acting CO on 24 May. On or about 9 June, a new commanding officer came in from Okinawa without any combat experience. So Steve became the XO again, the executive officer of that company. But of course, the new commanding officer knew absolutely nothing about that company or the context of what that company was doing. So Steve was the effective commanding officer of that company. They kicked off a multi-battalion operation south of Quezon about 10 June. The whole battalion did. 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. And on the 15th of June, the battalion was located on a Hill 685, near a village called Funoi. And they maintain a perimeter on the top of the hill. And each company was assigned a certain part of the perimeter of that hill. Steve's company was assigned to that part of the hill. The only access to the top of the hill was through a pathway in Steve's sector, company sector. To make a long story short, on just before dawn on the morning of the 15th of June, a NVA battalion began an assault on the hill up that pathway. They succeeded in penetrating the perimeter. Steve was, I guess, about 50 meters behind that perimeter, getting information about what was going on. When he heard that the perimeter had been breached, he single-handedly decided to form a counter-assault force of anybody could get a hold of to get online and sweep towards the area that had been penetrated. And he led that assault with a pistol and took just a few steps and was hit, immediately killed.